Today we're on Psalm 53 as we take up our series here through the Psalms in 10 minutes or less. Psalm 53. Now Psalm 53 is pretty well identical to Psalm 14, and Bible scholars aren't too certain why that is, why there's a psalm that's repeated in the Psalter. But there is a few minor differences, and they could be interesting if they were to be explored a little, and this is what we'll attempt to do. In Psalm 14, we have the name of God mentioned 7 times. In Psalm 53, God's name is mentioned 7 times, but with this difference. In Psalm 53, it's all Elohim, the mighty God, the Creator God. In Psalm 14, we have God, Elohim, mentioned 3 times, and Jehovah, Yahweh, mentioned 4 times. Now remember, we said that at the outset of the second book of the Psalms, that is Psalm 42 onwards, that it pictures the Jewish remnant sort of outside the city of Jerusalem. Again and again and again, the Great Tribulation is brought before us in this second book of the Psalms. And so here with Israel now outside the land, and they're in the place of the Gentile, that they're out of relationship with the covenant Lord, but the Lord Jesus will come back when they cry out to him and save them. And the persecution against the Jews is brought out in this psalm, of course. We get that in verse 4. How the workers of iniquity have the workers of iniquity no knowledge, who eat up my people as they eat bread. They have not called upon God. And we see the practical atheism, and more than practical atheism, of the persecutors of the saints of God here. We notice, and we saw this in Psalm 14 actually, the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. But here, there's even no Elohim, like they deny the creatorial rights of God, that they don't accept even the basic premise that God created all things. It's not simply a rejection of Christianity or a rejection of Judaism or a rejection that somewhere out there, somewhere there's a God, but they reject even the very idea that there's a creator, one who created all things. And the Bible calls such one a fool. And then we have the interesting conclusion of this psalm, verse 6. Oh, that the salvation of Israel were come out of Zion, when he bringeth back the captivity of his people. Jacob shall rejoice, and Israel shall be glad. Looks forward to a day when Israel will be saved, and that salvation will come out of Zion. There's 2 things there. Is that salvation of Israel will come out of Zion, but salvation itself comes out of Zion. That is, salvation will come to the Jews first, and then will flow into all the earth. All the nations shall be saved. Now, this is interesting when we connect it with the gospel dispensation that we're presently living in, where we see, in Acts chapter 1, the Lord Jesus told the disciples, begin to preach the gospel in Jerusalem and Judea, and then to the uttermost parts of the earth. So we see that the gospel started in Jerusalem, where the Lord Jesus was crucified, spread out to Judea, then Samaria, and then around the world to all the Gentiles. But with this difference than what we have here prophesied in the Old Testament, where it speaks of all the nations being converted and brought to the Lord through the house of Israel. And what we find in our dispensation is that Israel largely rejected Christ. And because they rejected Christ, salvation has come out to the Gentiles. Salvation, Paul brings this out in Romans chapter 11. Because of their rejection of Christ, because they're in a place of disobedience, now the gospel has gone out to all the nations. And now the Lord Jesus mentions this to the woman of Samaria. He says to her, salvation is of the Jew. He said the time would come when they would not worship God in Samaria or in Jerusalem, but he did recognize the fact that salvation initially comes out through the Jew. The Jew was set in a place of blessing. They had the law, they had the circumcision, they had the scriptures, and so on. And Messiah, according to the flesh, would come from the Jews. But they rejected that. And so salvation has generally come out to the Gentiles. But you know, the gospel will not save all the world. And people misunderstand this. They think that the gospel will spread throughout all the world in this dispensation, and ultimately all nations will be converted and all will come to God through Christ. That is not true. It's only a remnant, even from amongst the Gentiles. Now we get this on several places in the New Testament. But if we think of Acts chapter 15, for example, we get that the salvation is come to the Gentiles, and the purpose there is to take from out among the Gentiles a people for his name. In other words, we see this in Revelation, where people from every tribe, kindred, tongue, and nation will be saved. But there will be a representative people from every nation, or represented by every nation. But it's only a remnant or an elect from each nation. It's not the entire nations will be saved. In fact, it's only a minority and only a remnant. But in the millennium, the nations as a whole will be saved, largely saved. They'll be the majority, actually. And it's not through the gospel. It'll be through the conversion of the Jews. This is not generally seen. If you turn to Isaiah chapter 26, Isaiah chapter 26, it says in the verse 9, the middle of the verse, "For when thy judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world will learn righteousness. Let favor or grace," it could be translated, "be showed to the wicked, yet he will not learn righteousness. In the land of uprightness will he deal unjustly, and will not behold the majesty of the Lord." And what Isaiah is saying here is that it's when the judgments of God are in the earth, then the inhabitants of the world will learn righteousness, and not until then. Righteousness will not be established in the earth until the judgments begin. It's not through the gospel that the righteousness will flourish in the earth. And this is where a lot of Christians make mistakes. You know, they're trying to get themselves elected. They're trying to take over political parties to be in a place of authority that they may Christianize the world. This is so opposed to what Christianity really is. And ultimately, I believe that will lead to some sort of apostasy. It will lead to an apostasy where Christians are so involved, or professing Christians, in the politics of the world, they may even be swept away under the reign of Antichrist. That's where it may ultimately not true Christians, but it sets the stage for that. So Christians have to be very, very careful with all this political activity that goes on in the world, because it's ultimately God's judgment. When his judgments are in the earth, then will the inhabitants of the world learn righteousness. It is not for the Christian to establish a sort of Christian version of Sharia law, which some hold to, like the Christian dominionists and so on. That actually some in the U.S. election right now that's going on, some have that sort of view of things. You know, get their man voted in, and he'll make our country, or the country of the USA, to be a Christian country again. This is so wrong and so unbiblical. But it says in verse 10 of Isaiah 26, "Let favor be shown to the wicked, and he will not learn righteousness. In the land of uprightness he will deal unjustly, and will not behold the majesty of the Lord." All grace does to the wicked is cause them to scoff. And this is what we have, of course, in Psalm 53. You know, the fool has said in his heart, "There is no God." You know, grace and favor has not converted him. It's only made him more hardened against God. And even to the point of rejecting his creatorial rights. And we see this apostasy now beginning, where the order of creation, man and woman, male and female, is even being set aside. Even what nature teaches is being rejected with the so-called gay marriage and all of this. So how wonderful to know that in the coming day, salvation will come out of Zion. Israel will be saved first, and then the nations. You know, that's always the order, to the Jew first, and then to the Gentile. It is now, and it will be then. The only difference now, it's just a remnant from amongst each. And that day, it will be the whole earth. All the inhabitants of the world will learn righteousness.